Welcome everyone to today's Avid Tech Talk webcast series. These sessions were created for Avid customers and partners who administer, design, use, and implement Avid products. These sessions were also created to help you be more successful with the deployment and use of Avid product. And in today's session, we're going to be focusing on Orad 3 Designer, 3D Play, and Maestro. In today's session, specifically, we're going to be taking a closer look at understanding the basic environment and workflow procedures. Today's session is a live webcast presentation. And it's not designed with polished marketing content. Instead, these sessions are really less formal and focused on providing participants with technical content and as much demo material as possible. I'm Kelly Hoops. I'm a Senior Director with Avid Global Services, and I'm very happy to be the host of today's session. First, I'd like to give you a brief intro to Orad and then introduce you to Ariel, who will be the presenter of today's topic. Orad partnered with Avid in June 2015 and is a leading provider of 3D real-time graphics, video servers, and associated workflow management solutions. Orad customers worldwide use Orad's cutting-edge technology and has allowed it to produce graphics, live events, sports broadcasts, and much more. What's more exciting is that these solutions are already highly complementary to Avid's current product portfolio. Today's technical content about Orad will be presented by Ariel Rudin. Ariel joined Orad in 2009, and his career with Orad began as an on-air graphics and tracking support engineer. Through Orad, Ariel installed television camera tracking systems and supported tracking and graphics systems for television. He developed product manuals and video tutorials and is currently a technical training manager assisting with integration of Orad products into the Avid Everywhere suite. We are glad to have him join us today and introduce us to Orad environments and workflows. And with that, I'd like to turn the time over to Ariel for today's presentation.
Thank you, Kelly, for the introduction. Okay, so what's on today's agenda? First, we will see basic system schematics. We will see basic system workflow, including 3D Designer, 3D Play, and Maestro. We'll have some references and a review. Okay, what do we intend to benefit from this webcast? We will provide a basic understanding of Orad workflow. How does the system think? We will see how our hardware and software combination are used together to enable sophisticated workflow. So we can see 2D and 3D graphics being modified in an instant. And that will allow and available for broadcast in milliseconds. Please note that the way that we use it, the way that we use it is actually a bit different than what we use in post-production. Okay, so we will begin by component structure. At the heart of the system, we have the render engine. The render engine is responsible for displaying the graphics that we want to show on air. On top of that, we would have 3D Designer or 4D Designer, which is a graphics creation software, where we create the graphics that we want to display. And on top of that, we would have 3D Play or Maestro, which control the graphics that we create in 3D Designer or 4D Designer, and then in turn, will be displayed in the render engine. We have two main basic configurations. To your left, you can see that there's, in the control room, you would have a control PC with Maestro or 3D Play, with a local G drive, what we call a local G drive, a shared folder. In the Designer Studio, you would have a PC with 3D Designer or 4D Designer. Please note that both of them have a local render engine being used for local preview. To the right, you can see that there is a HDVG, which will send the program output through the render engine installed on the HDVG. All of that is connected via network. Another basic setup that we have is to have the shared drive, or G drive, on a dedicated central graphics server. Okay, so what we will do today. The basic workflow demonstration that we will have will be such. We will open 3D Studio Max. We will see a basic virtual set. We will export that to VRML, import the virtual set to Free Designer, open Photoshop. We will see a lower third that we have designed over there, save it as a PSD, and then in turn, we'll import that to Free Designer. Once we have all of the graphics that we want in Free Designer, we will be able to animate the graphics imported and set exports. The exports will allow us to change the content that we want. Once we have the exports, we will save the scene. We will open Maestro and in turn 3D Play, and we'll create a production to enable control the exports that we had in the scene with the new graphics that we just created. Okay, so let's begin. At first, you can see that in 3D Max, we have a simple virtual set. What we need to do is to go and export as VRML. We'll keep that in G Project Training VSet1, and I will call that VSet5. Why do we need to keep that in G? Because that would be our shared folder, which will allow the control PC and the HDVG to reach that file. So we would do save. Now note that on the exporter over here, we would need to mark normals, and then in bitmap URL prefix, you will see that we have G imports textures. Once again, it's the shared folder that we have. If we would go to G imports textures, you will be able to see all of the textures that we use for this specific virtual set. So let's go and say OK. Now we can go to Free Designer and go to File and say Import. Once we do import, we select VRML. Please note that we also work with Collada. So let's import VRML. We go to G Project Training VSet1, where we have saved our virtual set. Select VSet5 and open. At VRML import window, we will unmark Use Lights. We will keep the Use Textures checked, unmark Copy Textures to Directory, and uncheck Use Animations, and now we will process. It will give us an information window, and you can see how many triangles we have within the scene. Do you want to continue? Yes. And you can see that right now, we already have the virtual set in Free Designer. Now, why do we need to import the virtual set into Free Designer? As we said, we work in broadcast, so we would need to have all of the graphics that we would like up and running. So if there's a need for that, we won't have to wait for rendering it and use it as a material, but we will be able to just click on a button and it will be there. So all of that will actually be already cached on the HDVG. Okay, so let's carry on. Let's go to Photoshop, and we have created a lower third. Please note that the size is 1920 by 1080, which is a full HD size. So we would go and save as a PSD file. I will save it as lower third 4. Go back to Free Designer. Go to File, Import, PSD. Once I have that, I'll go to G, my shared drive, Imports, and lower third 4, PSD. And here we go. We already have our PSD file within the scene that we have in Free Designer. So now, let's animate the graphics that we have. First, I would like to have a fade in and fade out for my virtual set. So I would create an animation group called VS Fade in. And now I would go to frame 50 and set visibility 1 by going to the action box and set key. Now I would go to frame 0 and set visibility 0. Once again, go to my action box and set key. If we will test it, we will see that the virtual set is fading in. Now, once I have a fade-in animation, I can create a fade-out animation very easily. What I would need to do is to clone my animation group and mirror my animation keys. If so, this should already be my VS fade-out animation. So I would play, and you can see that it fades out. Perfect. Now let's go back to our lower third. Once we open the lower third group, you can see that we have our background lower third and Vampire Diaries text. Note that the text is only a placeholder. It's not a live text. So I would like to go and create a live text. I would go to my asset strip, drag a text object, and put it inside my lower third group. Now, since we write it from left to right, I would go to my shape, and layout X will be to the left, and layout Y will be center. And now I will be able to place my text exactly where my text holder is positioned. So let's scale it down a bit and move it a bit to the right. Once I have that, I can remove my placeholder. If I go to my text and say show 1, you see that the text box changes the content according to what we have. Next, I would like to animate my lower third. So let's do a pop in and pop out animation for my lower third. I would go to my lower third group, create a new animation, and would say lower third in. I know that this would be my final position, so I go to frame 50 and set a key on my y-axis. Now I would go to frame 0 and set a different value for my y-axis, and once again, set key. So if we now test this animation, we will see my lower third popping in. And just like we did previously with the VS, once we have the in animation, we can easily clone and mirror the keys. And now this will be my lower third out animation. Let's test it by playing this animation. Perfect. So we have 4 animation groups over here. One would be lower third in, and virtual set fade in. One would be lower third out, and virtual set fade out. Now, I would like to control what I have in my lower third, so let's bring it back in. I would like to change the background and the name of the show. So what do I need to do that? In order to do that, I go to my background, to my lower third, and go to my image. You can see that I have a path over here. This will be the path to my image. In order for me to change that, I would need to create an export. An export is actually giving us the ability to change any property of any object within 3D Designer. So if I would go and create an export, you can see that I have a path to my background of my lower third. So let's rename this by pressing F2, and I will say lower third BG. And this would be my path to shared drive, textures, lower third 4, layer 2 PNG. Later on, in the controllers, such as Maestro or 3D Play, I will be able to change that via browse. Next, I would like to change the content of my text. So I would select my text, go to Shape, and in my text box, I would export my text string. And now, everything I will change within this field, such as show A, it will change right away on my text box. So let's rename this export as text content. Now, once we have our graphics ready, let's save the scene. I will save it in Project Training, and I will save it as Workflow 5. Now, I will close Free Designer and open 3D Play. Note that 3D Play is actually built out of two components. We have the server and the client. So we go to the server, and the service status is stopped. So let's start it. Once it's running, I will be able to connect my client. Perfect. Now it's up and running. Now, first thing I would like to do is to create a local render engine. So I would right-click anywhere in the gray area and select Local Render Engine. While the render engine is loading, it takes a couple of seconds depending on the computer, but please note that we can have only one instance of the render engine. If you remember our schematics, the render engine is actually a standalone software. So whatever software is working with the render engine has the authority to send graphics to it. This is why we had to close Free Designer render engine, so we could open the render engine in 3D Play. So the render engine has come up. Now I would be able to connect to local preview and to my program. Now, I would like to create two different actions. One would bring my virtual set, and one would bring my lower third. So let's right-click and create a new action. This new action, I will click on it and say Edit. Now, I will rename it as VS in Out. Where would I like to send it to? Both to local preview and my program. Now I would go to my graphic item tab and load the production, the scene that I had, and load it. So you can see that we have the 4 animations that we already created in 3D Designer. So when I say play, I would like to say play my VS fade in animation. And when I click stop, I would like to say VS fade out animation. So let's close this. We can load our graphics. You see that both of them are loaded, both the local preview and the program. And now let's do a quick test on the local preview. Let's play. And we see that the virtual set has fade in. Let's do the same with our program. And you can see that the virtual set has been sent to the remote render engine, to our HDVG. So let's fade out on the preview and fade out on the program. Now, the next thing that we want to control is the lower third. So let's create another action that will do just that. I would right-click and create a new action. On this new action, I would edit and would rename it as lurford in out. I would select to what renders I would like to send it to, both local preview and my program, and go to graphic item. Now, when I say play on this action, I would like it to play my lurford in animation. So it will pop in. And when I say stop, I would like it to play my lurford out animation. But if you remember, we have our exports, which we would like to update. So we would go to our Queue tab and send both of these exports to my queue. So every time I will queue this action, it will update these exports. But in order for me to do that, I would need to create a GI. A GI is a variable which is active for this specific action. So let's go to a GI tab and say add. Now, over here, I would like to say lurford VG path, because I would like this variable to show what background I have for my lurford. And I would set the type to browse, so I could just browse for my file. In addition, I would need to say show in the inputs window. Once I do that, I say OK, and you can see I have created a GI parameter, a variable. Now I would say add once again and create a text content. So I would name it as text content and set type text. Once again, I will need to show in inputs window. And OK. Next, I would need to drag and drop according to the export that I want to control. So if I would take my lurford background path, I would select it to my lurford BG export. So the export will be the value that we have within this variable. Next, I would drag my text content to text content export. So once again, we will have the export of text content will have the value that I have within this variable. And say OK. And once we select this action, the lurford in and out, you can see I have two fields, one per each variable, one per each GI. So I would select the lurford path, click on it, and would say, give me this image, the gray one, instead of the black. And open. And text content, I would say, show ABC. Apply. Now let's play out my previous animation. I would queue to update my exports, play my in animation, and you can see that the content changed according to what I have defined in my variables. Let's do the same for my program. Queue and play. And here we go. We just modified graphics on air. And let's do the same now with virtual set, fly in. And this is how we send graphics in 3D Play for broadcast. So let's take everything out and save this production. I would save it as workflow 5. Now we can close 3D Play. And once again, shut down the server. Stop and close. Next, we would go to Maestro and go through the same process. Double-click on Maestro. And in order to log in, I would need to use the password, which would be Maestro. And here we go. Now that the render engine is loading, okay, in Maestro we have three main tabs. One would be Playout, where we play out the pages that we have created. One would be Page Editor, where we create the pages that we would like to send on air. And Default, which is a combination of both. So let's go to Page Editor and create a new page. I would click on New and select what scene I would like to use. I would go to Training Projects and would use my Workflow 5 scene, which we just did in Redesigner. Let's press OK. And now, first thing I want to do in this scene is to start and play my Lurford in. This would be one phase, one step. Note that once I had added one line, I have one line over here, 0 out of 1. If I would add another one, this will change to two steps, 2 phases. On the second phase, I would like to VS fade in, and then I would like to say what happens when I say out, stop. So let's create an out phase, and on this, I would say VS fade out, wait for a couple of seconds, and then I would say Lurford out. But if you recall, we have our exports, which we need to control, which are the show name and the background of my Lurford. So we would need to create a queue. So every time when we will set queue, we'll be able to update our exports by send the export, which exports we want to update, the Lurford background, and the text content. So let's see what phases we have. Phase 1 will bring my Lurford. Phase 2 will bring my virtual set, just like we have defined in our phases over here, in our steps. And out will take it out. Virtual set first, wait, and Lurford out second. So once we have our graphics in, we can make a snapshot. So we would have a visual representation of what we have on the page. On this snapshot, I would go to Scene, and you can see that in the scene I have my 2 exports. One would be for my Lurford background, and one would be for my text content. Okay, so I will drag my export of the Lurford background to my page. And over here, I would say Image Selector. And now, when I double-click, you can see that I actually can select a different image. If I would go to my G, Imports, Textures, I can see all of the images that I can use. Next, I would go to Text Content, drag it to my page, and set single line text. So whatever I will change in my text box over here, show 1, 2, 3, will change on my page. Okay. So let's save this page. I will save it as Workflow 5. And go to my playout. First, I would need to create a new rundown. And say, drag my Workflow 5 page into my rundown. And now, if I will connect and load everything to my local preview and program, let's do a preview locally over here. We can see that we have popping in for our lower third and fade in for my virtual set. Next, I would say cue and play for my program, step 1, and step 2. You can see that both of my virtual set and my lower third has loaded to program. Now, if I would like to create a different graphics, or use the same graphics but with a different content, I can do it very easily. I select the page I would like and drag with the puzzle straight to the rundown. And over here, I would say, on the second page, I would say show A, B, C, and select, instead of a black background, I would like to use a different image. Okay. So now I would cue. Let's first take our previous graphics out. And send the second graphics, which we have modified to show ABC and a different image. So cue and play 1, and cue and play 2. So as you can see, the content has changed according to what we have modified over here. Basically what we did is create a template, and we can change the content according to our needs. So every parameter that you would like to change in the graphics, you would need to create an export. And this is how we send graphics on air with Maestro. So let's take everything out. And close, save the scene. Let's save it as workflow 5. And shut down. Okay, so next you can see that we have several references. You can find more material in Orad website at orad.tv. There's a Orad YouTube channel. Within that channel, you can actually see also the NAB 2015 show reel. And in the following links, you would find more material about Free Designer, 3D Play, and Maestro. Okay, so what we have done in our session now. We saw what is the basic system schematics that we have. We covered a basic system workflow with Free Designer, 3D Play, and Maestro. We saw some references, and we're doing a review. So now that would be the time for Q&A. So if you have anything, please chat. Okay, one of the questions that we have is, why do we have 2 controllers? That's a good question. Okay, first of all, Maestro, as you saw, is more linear. It will work just as a rundown, page 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. In addition to that, Maestro does integrate with iNews. 3D Play, on the contrary, is mostly used for events that are non-linear, I would say, such as elections, sports, everything which does not have a known order, I would say. Okay, and another question that we have. What exports can be done in Free Designer? What can be modified? Okay, logic is such. Anywhere you would have an action box, just like we saw in Free Designer, can be either played by animation or have an export for that. So basically, you can modify visibility, color, content. It's very, very flexible. Okay, let's open Free Designer, and you can see that once I have this, I can set export for my exposition or for my color on RGB, even on shape if I want to make the front visible, invisible, and so on. Okay, another question that we have is, what language is being used for scripting in Maestro? Okay, Maestro uses Java scripting in order to do any more complex modifications that you have. We do have some material to get you started off, so if required, please let us know. Okay, any more questions? All right, great. So,
fantastic.
Kelly?
So it looks like, well, yeah, thanks so much, and we'll go ahead and start to wrap up. So thank you, Ariel, so much for conducting today's Tech Talk session. We really appreciate it. If there were any questions that happened to come in either a little bit late or we weren't able to answer them, again, we will be sending out an email in the next few days after Ariel has an opportunity to document the answers, not only to any questions that maybe came in and we weren't able to answer, but also to all the questions that he was able to answer during the webcast today. And we do hope you found the information today valuable and useful. As we plan our next webcast series, we definitely want to make sure that we include topics that are most valuable to our customers. So while we wrap up this webcast, we have a huge favor to ask each of you. Terry's going to be sending out a brief survey link in the WebEx session. If you go to the WebEx session, you'll actually see it from Jeff. And in that, you'll see a link. You can click on that link, and you can provide us with feedback of today's session. In that survey, you'll also get an opportunity to give us ideas and recommendations for future topics that we can have in future Tech Talks. So please make sure you take that survey. That feedback is very important to us. If you also found today's session useful, we also suggest additional training options to help you be even more successful with the Orad products. We have a comprehensive set of on-site training courses covering the full range of Orad products. Training is delivered by our Orad specialists from professional services who have many years of project implementation experience. Our courses cater for the needs of graphic designers, studio operators, and support engineers, and are tailored to products, integrations, and workflows deployed in your production environment. You can find out more by emailing training@avid.com if you're interested in any of those training options. All right, we want to thank you again for taking the time to attend today's Avid Tech Talk webcast. We hope you found the information valuable and useful. Please do visit our Tech Talk registration page to register for additional Tech Talk sessions. New sessions will also be posted regularly, so please visit often. And then as we plan our next webcast, we want to make sure we include topics that are valuable to you. As I stated, there's a survey link that you can take, but in the next 24 hours, you're going to be receiving another survey invitation. It's actually the same survey, so if you took an opportunity to give us feedback today, that's really great. You don't need to take the survey again, but you will get a survey reminder in the next 24 hours, so just want to make sure you're aware of that. And please also feel free to send any questions or comments or additional feedback on today's session to customer.care@avid.com. With that, we want to thank you one final time for attending today's Tech Talk webcast session.